My name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. Alright, I'm excited about today's review. This is the Seiko SRPE41, aka the Negroni, aka the Red Cocktail Time. So I've always liked Seiko Cocktail Times. They're a line of dressier watches where the dials are inspired by different mixed drinks, different cocktails. However, I've always found them to be a touch too big at about 40.5 millimeters. Well, they finally made a smaller one. This one is 38.5 millimeters. And I'm just going to bring in my Seiko SARB, which is 38 millimeters, to hold them side by side. And you can see, yes, this is a much smaller, much more approachable size if you prefer what I do. Watches around 38, 39 millimeters. So there is finally a Seiko Cocktail Time for the people that prefer these smaller watches. So as always, we're going to do specifications, pros, cons, and if I think this watch is worth the money. But before we begin, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the content of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. So starting with the case, we have 38.5 millimeters in diameter. It's only 45 millimeters lug to lug, and then it's 12 millimeters thick, but you'll see a large part of that is that domed crystal, and then the lug width is 20 millimeters. Now the case is all high polished, which is fine for a dressy style watch like this. You do have the mid case that flows into the lugs, and then you have the case back screwing into the bottom here, and then the bezel and the crystal on the top. So overall, simple design case, but for a watch like this, I think it's a fitting case. Now the supplied leather strap, this is calf leather, and it just starts at 20 millimeters. It tapers all the way down to 15. And then you have this double push to plant Seiko clasp that I really like that they included this. Now, when you have a leather band like this, I actually like to add an aftermarket deployant like this for a number of reasons. One, once you get the deployant in the right hole for your wrist size, it makes putting the watch on and off very easy because you don't have to fiddle with the pin and collar. You just push these double deployants, put your wrist in, and then snap it closed. And then the second reason is it does tend to preserve the life of the strap for a long time. You know, every day when you're yanking on the strap to get the pin and collar in the right hole, it does add a lot of wear to the band overall, but when it's on a deployant, you're really not adding a lot of wear when you're using the watch. You're just opening and closing the deployant. And then another feature that I love that Seiko did here that you don't generally see on stock straps from big brands like this, it does have quick pin releases. So if you want to do a strap change, it's going to be very easy to do so. So I took advantage of that quick release spring bar so you can get a good view of the back of the watch here. So we have an exhibition case back with some screw down. It's screw down, but keep in mind, this is only 50 meters of water resistance. So it's fine for this style of watch. I don't think you're going to use this around the water, but it's something to take note of. You don't have the 100 meters you find on some of the other dressy style Seiko watches like the SARB, for example. So just keep in mind, only 50 meters here. And then the movement, of course, is the Seiko 4R35. So this is a hacking, hand-winding, 21,600 vibration per hour movement. It is stated accuracy is minus 20 to plus 40 seconds per day, but in general, I've seen a lot of these, and on average, I would say you get much closer to plus or minus 10 seconds a day. And then it does have a 41-hour power reserve. Now, these movements generally aren't very decorated, but you can see they used a gold tone rotor here, and that does add some visual interest and does make the movement feel a little bit more decorated overall. The 6 millimeter push-pull crown is nicely signed with that deeply etched Seiko S, and then there's a nice step before the knurling begins. Overall, I think this crown is a great size for this watch, and it makes operation of the watch very easy. Now the crystal is massively domed, and this is Hardlex, Seiko's proprietary material. It's supposedly more scratch resistant than plain mineral crystal, but I've seen some scratch tests on YouTube that makes me question that a little bit. Nevertheless, I love the domed crystal here. It adds kind of a vintage flair, and then as you can see, it adds some great distortion when you're viewing the dial from an angle. I would like to see sapphire here, but unfortunately at this price point, Seiko is generally only going to give you Hardlex. So that brings us to the star of the show, and that is the dial on this watch. So you can see as I turn it a little bit away from the light, it sometimes appears as just a gradient dial with the red in the middle fading to black on the outside. But give it just the right amount of light and that guilloche pattern starts to form almost before your eyes and starts to catch the light in these really beautiful and complex patterns. This is a real chameleon dial. Sometimes in some lighting conditions, it even appears black. And overall, the execution is really just overall superb on this watch. And then you have a playful application of applied indices half are stick and then half are Arabic numerals. It makes reading the time very easy and adds a lot of character to the watch overall. There's minimal text, you just have the applied Seiko logo at 12, Precision Automatic printed at 6 o'clock, and then Made in Japan at the bottom of the dial there. The date window is nicely framed, and overall I think works with the watch. I am curious, however, just how cool a non-date version of this watch would be. The handset is also finished to a high degree. It's gabled so it catches light on one side or the other, and it's very subtle, but half of the hand is high polish and half of it is a frosted finish. So it plays in the light slightly differently and really adds to the legibility of the hands in different lighting conditions. And you can see that minute hand is plenty long. It's terminating all the way out at that minute dash around the edge of the dial. And then we have a second hand that has that very cool kind of sewing needle counterbalance, and that is also quite long. So I am a big fan of the handset on this watch overall. There's no lume to speak of on this watch, but that's fine. You know, this is a more dressy, casual style watch, and you generally don't have lume on a watch of this style. And popping it on the Timegrapher, stated accuracy is -20 to +40, but how about 0 seconds a day on this one? It's a little bit of a luck of the draw with these Seiko movements, but I do find the tolerances are much tighter than the stated accuracy, and I generally get between plus or minus 10 seconds a day, but I'm not going to complain here on the 0 second a day rate. So here is the watch on my 6 3/4 inch wrist, and you can see that shorter 45mm lug to lug and then 38.5mm case diameter. It's a great size for me overall. I really like my watches to be around 39mm. So if you like the smaller size and you just haven't really been drawn to the larger Seiko cocktail times, I think this is the one for you. So that brings us to the pros and cons, and like I said, that size, that's my first pro on this watch. If you're looking for a smaller cocktail time, your wait is over, here's the one for you. And this watch does come in a number of other colorways, and it seems like they're continuously putting out colorways of this exact case size. So keep your eyes open if you're not a fan of the red. Speaking of the red, the second pro on this watch is the dial. I think Seiko does the best dials, period, in this price range, and this is no exception. It's dynamic, playful, and wonderfully executed. This dial is a real showstopper. And then the third pro is the DePoint clasp. For when I have, like on my SARB, for example, I have a really nice leather strap on there, and I had to buy an aftermarket deployant. I just prefer having a deployant. It makes it much easier to take the watch on and off and really adds to the life of the strap. So, and a good aftermarket deployant can cost like $40 or $50. So the fact that they've included it with this watch, I find that as a major pro. I only have one con with this watch, and that's the domed crystal. Now, I love the dome, and I feel it plays well with the overall design, but I really wish it was sapphire. I don't think Seiko is going to give us sapphire at this price point, but I really think they should have in this case. I just worry it's so proud of the case itself. It's going to be really easy to catch on something and get a scratch, and then it's really going to kind of diminish the overall effect of that really cool domed crystal. So is this watch worth the money? Well, the MSRP of this watch is $425, but at the time of this recording, you can find them for around $340. So I picked up one used, so I paid even less than that, and that's something I always recommend. If you can buy a used watch and you're okay with getting a very slightly used watch, you can save a lot of money. But at MSRP, I think if they had a sapphire crystal, it would be worth it, but with the Hardlex, I'm pretty disappointed at that price point. Overall, the design of the watch is great. I think it wears well. It's dressy enough for more formal settings, but won't look out of place in a casual setting as well. And I don't think this watch is limited, so you might just wait and see if the price floats down to $300 or maybe even sub $300. I have seen some of the other cocktail times go for around $300 or a little bit less if you can find a good sale. What I can say is if you can find a price that you can justify, this watch is not going to disappoint you. So there you guys have it, the Seiko SRPE41. What do you guys think about this watch? Leave a comment below if you like it, if you like the size, if you were a fan of the old cocktail time. Just let me know your overall impressions on this one. And then, as always, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. That's all for this time. My name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches.